Okay, so let's try some. Okay, have you got the stick? Okay, so we want to feel the two muscles. So when something moves, it's if it can move one way, but it can also move back the other way, then there's two muscles involved. So I tighten the left side of my lower back and it turns me this way, but it also stretches the right side. So the right side is now like stretched elastic, and then all I have to do is just relax the left side, and the right side will naturally spring me back to the middle, and then the right side actively tenses to pull me this way. So I just want to be really aware of the interaction of these two muscles. So the system has to remain tight and toned. If it's slack and flabby, then I'm having to use too much force to start it up. So you twist one way and that brings your mind into the muscle, the other side, and then you can just let that muscle kick in. Yeah, just try and get the mind into the muscles rather than looking at it from above. So it's just a different mind. So a mind that can just go into there, a mind that's with the machine rather than observing the machine. Yeah, so mindful movement, but not just a mind that's with the movement, but a mind that's with the machine that's generating the movement. So you're really going into the workings of the body. And just feel the tension in the belly. Yeah, so it's the whole belt of the waist. So the whole thing needs to be taut, which obviously includes the belly. Right. Okay, so just maintain that tightness in the belt of the waist and just going from side to side now. Just feel the side that's stretching and the side that's tensing. So one side is getting shorter and that's causing the other side to stretch. And now I just want to stretch it to the point where it's stimulated to pull back. So I want to feel the elasticity in the muscles. Yeah, we just want the machine to be organic rather than mechanical. So if it's mechanical, then there'll be a sense of stopping when you reach the limit and then starting again when you move the other way. So there'll be a sense that when the body stops, the mind stops too. So when it's organic, what we're trying to do is keep it continuous, mind continuous. So when it threatens to grind to a halt and stop, so when we reach a limit here, something in my mind really has to intensify to make sure that it pulls back. So this is what lends it this organic quality. It sort of breathes, it's got a breathing quality to it. So here, something really, ooh, and then it pulls back. So there's a rhythm, not just a back and forth rhythm, but sort of there's a rhythm to the intensity. So just feel that like this point, it could just sort of stretch on forever and get more and more intense until. So those are the points where we hit sort of central equilibrium, sort of an equilibrium that's not moving, but is actually the product of contrary movements. So here, there's something in me the more I can expand inside, the longer I can keep this position, but then eventually it has to spring back. So just using the mind in a spirited way. And then just a few more twisting. Yeah, so the longer we work it, the more sort of juicy the elastic becomes. So this is what we want to sort of just investigate, is how does spirit change the quality of the fabric of the body? So it makes it elastic and it makes it juicy. It becomes incredibly responsive. Okay, now let's just tip forwards. Yeah, so the back is really bowing, again, stretching the muscles in the back, and then just let it spring back, and then letting the head tip backwards and tightening the muscles in the belly to hold it, and then just springing those muscles back. Yeah, so we're just trying to just turn the body into something that can be really responsive. So it's something we don't normally have to do nowadays. We don't normally have to respond immediately. And that what that basically means is that we're never really operating in real time. You know, there's always, oh, let me think about it. There's always this sort of sense that you've got time to sort of consider before you need to act. And now let's do the same thing really, but just going over the leg, over the knee, and then back up, and then just turning. Yeah, so they can be as deep and as intense as you like, or also as gentle as you like. You just want to make sure the system remains toned up, so there's no slack. And the limit, you know, so here, this is the limit of how deeply I can go. But if I don't need to go that deep, then I need to manufacture a limit at the place where I need to go to. Yeah, so we're also, the tone inside the body is always changing to suit the situation. And now just pushing the stick up and down now. And so again, just using the belt of the waist, yeah. So my back is tightening to push it up, and then I just imagine it's stuck up there. It's like it's held up by elastic from the ceiling. So now I really have to kick in the belly muscles to start it pulling down. Yeah. So it's like make-believe. We need to be able to just pretend, put our energy into something that doesn't really require it. Pull the belly. And then I tighten the back. And now just pulling it. So like you're trying to pull the two hands away from each other. You're trying to stretch the stick in the middle. And just sink into it. It feels, you want the feeling that the stick is actually stretching a little bit in the middle. So you can twist the hands against each other a little bit just to get it more physical, just to get more into it. Yeah, so these where we pull the stick and push the stick like this, these are really good for just activating the fascia. So you get this feeling that there's these sort of movements inside the body. So you're producing a still state, so the two hands gripping the stick relative to each other, not moving, and just forcing movement in. So it's the same as when we squat and put our hands on the ground. Obviously, the hands are not moving relative to each other, but they feel like they are because the fascia inside the body is becoming activated. So the movement is actually inside you rather than inside the hands. It's just that we're not used to that sort of movement, so it feels like it's in the hands. And then just press the hands towards each other. So now you're pushing the stick in the middle. So now you're squashing it. And again, it's getting the fascia moving, but in a different way. And then just pull it again. And push again. Yeah, so it's good for extending the breath, so you can coordinate your breathing with it. So here I start breathing in as I pull the stick. And just keep that in-breath coming in. In. And then just reverse it. Ooh. And again, you can just really go right down deep into it. And then change, pulling now. And pushing. And pulling. And pushing. Okay, so now let's just try just a few more twisting. Yeah, so that belt of the waist should be well toned up now. So now you can do this quite minimal, but you'll still have that kickback because we've toned up the machine. So we don't need to go to such extremes to get the same effect. Okay, now let's just try. So holding the stick at the ends and just going over the head and behind the back. So this bit here that's going behind yourself, just trying to keep the arms straight. Just so feeling the shoulders really opening. It just takes a few rounds to get the shoulders open. And just really feel how it affects the spirit. So to go over the top, either way, going this way or the other way, it just requires something inside you to really expand, almost balloon way. And that's just spirit. Ooh. It's like the opposite of cool. If cool is just being ultra efficient, seeming as though you're not putting any effort in, then this is the opposite. You're just trying to be as inefficient as possible. You're using a lot of energy and special energies to do something that's very simple, that doesn't require it, but does require it to do it well. And one more up. Back. And then okay, let's just take it back and just put the stick down Not sure how we do that. Okay, now we just want to cycle with the legs, yeah? So just leaning back on your sacrum and your lower back. Yeah, so we just want the legs to be strong where they sort of join the body. So they're not just strong enough to hold me up, they're strong enough for me to lift them up. And then back up. Okay, so let's stand up now. Okay, let's just try. Start with the breathing. Again, just using that belt that we've just established. So here the muscles in the belly are tightening, and then that stretches across here so that then the back can start tightening. You just want the feeling that as soon as the muscles start doing something, it produces movement. So there's no delay, there's no lag. Okay, so let's just bring it to riding horse now. Okay, now let's just move side to side, and again, just pulling with the feet. But the same sort of principle as we've just been working on. So as one side pulls, the other side is allowed to sort of really just extend. And then there comes a point where it can't extend anymore. And so it pulls back as the movement needs to continue. And we want to feel the extension being in the little, it's like the two small toes, you know, the fifth and the fourth toes. So my little toe is really extending out, and then it's that starts curling up, that starts the movement back. So the little toe and the little finger are like the scouts. Those are just sort of venturing. They're like the little people that don't get noticed, you know. And the big toe is like the fat controller that's just bossing them around. So the little toes extend and then they just curl up, like same as on the hand. And we just want to feel the spirit in the little fingers and the little toes. So there's much more spirit there than there is in the large toe. The big toe is just, it's more forceful. And the little toe it's so little, it needs spirit just to make it, give it any significance, yeah? So you really have to work hard to extend the little toes and the little fingers, because they won't do it by themselves, because we lack spirit. So you need spirit to extend the little toes and the little fingers. And so really making an effort to extend them will just draw the spirit. You'll just bring spirit to yourself. Whoa. So I don't know if you watched that Divided Brain movie that I sent, but it's actually really important. So this idea that the brain is two halves and they both look at the world and engage the world completely differently. So the part that we're privileged, that our societies are privileged, is the left brain, which sees everything in sort of detail and rationally, mechanically. And then the other brain just sees the bigger picture, sees all the connection, has no sense of self, no sense of being separate from the world it's in. So that's obviously the part of the brain we're trying to access. But also just that principle that, like the masters of suspicion, so Nietzsche, Freud, Marx, they saw the world, but then they were suspicious. No, things aren't like this really. There's some other, there's a bigger principle, and that principle proposes the opposite to what is observed. And so you can think of left brain, right brain, but it's still all mind. It's still brain, mind. It's still the brain. But you can use that same principle of stepping outside of your system and extrapolating a larger system, if you like. So we can think of the brain in the head, but also the brain in the belly. So we're also trying to get into the belly, obviously. And there's just as many nerve endings in the belly as there are in the head. But also like the hand, so we privilege the forefinger and the thumb. So they say that it's the ability to do this that caused us to sort of take off in the first place as a species. And so these two fingers, the ring finger and the small little finger, are almost becoming vestigial. And so the same in the mind, there's parts of the mind that are becoming vestigial because we don't really need them to function in society. So those are the bits we want to sort of become interested in. And what we don't need anymore, we don't need spirit. So since we started using force to control our environment, which it really began, I guess, with agriculture, yeah. And so it just produced like a different mind. It's a mind that didn't need to be completely alert and vigilant and really responsive anymore. It could actually just become slavish and lazy. So what the archaeologists find is that, so the very early evidence of humans is just saturated with religion. Yeah, so they were super religious. So they just basically, it was animism. So they were just so alert and alive. We hadn't developed that, what they call conscious interiority. So this sense of an inner self. And so they just saw spirit everywhere. So everything possessed spirit, everything was alive. And then with the advent of agriculture, so we no longer needed that sort of, because we now had these cozy villages that we settled into, and we'd largely killed off any predators. So we just didn't need that. So we then that's when we had to invent monotheism. We had to invent the big one God who has retreated from man. He no longer speaks to men. Because we don't have the spirit to hear it. We no longer had the spirit to engage nature in a living way. Nature is now something to be controlled and manipulated. And of course, the Industrial Revolution was just the final straw. Yeah, but we all have experiences of spirit, if we're actually honest. And it just depends on, what sort of character do you have? Are you willing to just treat those as sort of embarrassing accidents? Or do they become the dominant experiences of your life? Yeah. So something reels off me and then pulls. So this is how John works. So, so he would just let something expand out of him, and then he'd just get a sense of these structures. It wasn't just a wave of energy that's just coming off you. It's actually, there are structures, but you just need great energy. You just need really great spirit to be able to activate it. Okay, so let's. Okay, so let's just tightening the belly now. So the reverse breathing. So breathing through the small hole, so sucking in the air. And blowing it out. Yeah, so this really tonifies the belt of the waist. So you can just use this, whenever, just to give yourself some readiness, some spirited readiness. And now let's just one after the other now. So it's a bit like as a musician sort of slipping into double time. So you've like double the speed, or you're doing double the work. And then just get into the turning a bit more. So to get into the turning, it's important just to keep the spine still. So just keep the spine in the middle. Yeah, so we don't really like turning spaces because they tend to sort of make us dizzy. So here you just got to just disappear into the turning. Again, you're not outside watching this body gyrating, you're inside. You're in the Dan chair. And the hands just end up figure of eighting. And again, the big toes are still, the little toes, are still reaching out. But you can see the figure of eight just isn't right. Because here, I want my little toes to go out, but here the thumb is going out. Yeah, so there's something just not right about our figure of eight, I suspect. So the more inside you go, the tighter it gets. You're trying to go to the core, the very center of where the movement is starting in the danchen, basically. Okay, so let's just bring it back. Yeah, so we're just trying to get more and more inside. So the two minds again, one mind that we want to be drawing into the center of the motor that's producing the movement, and another mind that is with the effect of that motor, so with the extremities of the movement. Yeah. So we need both minds. We always need the yin and the yang, otherwise it just gets out of balance. And when it's out of balance, it won't continue. So there'll come a point where it sort of collapses, or we get tired and we want to stop. Okay, now let's just reverse it now. So we were doing this, weren't we? So the hand that was opening was facing up, and then it would turn to face down when it closed, yeah? So that tends to privilege the finger and the thumb, the forefinger and the thumb as it comes out. So now what we want to do is we're using the little finger to form the fist. So instead of using the thumb and the forefinger to form the fist, we're now using the little finger to start the fist, yeah? So it becomes this way. So as the hand goes out and opens up, it's turning to face out with the little finger on top. And then the little finger clenches, forms a fist, and this one comes out. And now we've got the little finger and the little toe behaving the same. So as I tighten into this side really opens up, but it's the little finger and the little toe that open most. So they venture out furthest. They're my scouts. Ooh. Okay. So let's bring it back. Okay, so once we have this belt with a certain tone in it, then this area, the two halves of the body can just really relax apart because you know it's contained here. We don't want it to be held together with the mind. The mind just to split into its two sides, the same as we want the body to split into its two sides. And then just feel the feet. The feet feel like they're sort of they're standing on two little islands that are sort of mobile relative to each other. So there's a sense of play between the 2 feet. Yeah, so it's not a world, you know, so we're always making our world, we're constructing our world all the time. So when we stand like this, we've assumed that there's like a stable stillness, yeah, that basically when we stand like this, we lock out any sort of accidental movement. If we turn side to side, then it's because we mean to. So we just want to relax that so that you just feel all this movement and you're not quite sure where it's coming from. Is it coming from inside me, or is it just the air that's buffeting me and making me move? So you're just really sensitive and responsive and just moving all the time. And really feeling the feet, the sort of shifting relative to each other. And then they really do become sort of independent, yeah? If you try and feel the feet, they're very much sort of locked together. Yeah, so I feel, okay, I feel the ground. I don't really feel my feet, yeah? And I know that the ground is the same here as it is here. So these are all like assumptions that we just impose upon the world in order to make it manageable to our lazy minds. So we just went, okay, what if this was really unstable, if the ground was really unstable and it was shifting, how would it feel? Yeah. How would it open me up? Yeah. So I don't want the hard stiffness of the ground to make me hard and stiff. I want it to allow me to really open up and be crumble and basically split into as many tiny pieces as possible, all of them sort of moving and gyrate like the fascia, you know, these tiny thousands and millions of threads that just pass through your being along each one, like all like little nerves, yeah. And so to allow these 2 feet some sort of independence, how do I release here? Because it is here. It's in the tail and the lower sacrum. Something there just has to, sort of opens up. But then you just realize, shit, yeah, it's all held together here. So I don't need to get frightened and seize up. I won't fall into 2 halves if I let go of my sacrum. So again, the 2 minds, yeah. So one mind is with the belt and just holding this sort of tautness. And another mind is just trying its utmost to just open and expand and let go. So there always has to be 2. And we just want to, you know, feel the 2, have part of me with one, part of me with the other. Okay, and now let's just figure of 8 formally. So again, just trying to stay in the middle. And just feeling the 2 arms. So they're basically doing the opposite of each other. So as one's going up, the other one's going down. As one's going to the left, the other's going to the right. And so just feeling them sort of coordinating with each other without being locked together in too much of a regular movement. Yeah, so each hand is really listening to the other so that when the other moves a little bit, it can move. Way. So it's real listening mind. If Tai Chi can be put down to one word, it'll be listening. So here it's the finger and the thumb, and here it's the little finger. Yeah, so the bottom of the figure of 8 requires my little finger, and the top of the figure of 8 requires my thumb and my forefinger. Okay, so let's just bring it back. And just tightening here to this sense that this is always pulling, it's always drawing you in. It's a bit like the reel on the fishing rod. So you can send the line out, but then you quickly reel it back in. And if the line is slack, then the hook won't respond to the yank of the rod. Yeah, so the whole system has to be quite taut, but also really delicate. Okay, now let's just try going around the figure of 8 the other way. So this is like the little finger going over the top. Yeah. Yeah, so this apparently, according to Nitzan, this is like the Chen style one. And in a way, it's sort of more natural because as you go underneath, it becomes sort of the heavy finger thumb part. And as you go over the top, it's the really light little finger. Ooh. And then let's try the other one. So it takes a while to work it out. Yeah, so just think of the sort of little finger leading. Yeah, so as you go over the top and you pass through them. So basically this is like squatting single whip, you know, the bottom of squatting single whip where we do this, where we keep the elbow down. So it's all there in the form, everything that we do. Just have to find it. And the little fingers extend and then they curl up. Okay. So in Chen style, you know, their ward off can be like this as well. So the little finger on top. And so very much like the big part of you. So this part, which sort of spills out when we do Yang style, that's sort of really retreating and just sinking down into the Dan Chen. And it's these small vestigial peripheral parts that come into their own. But they just require a very different mind to activate and to sustain. So it's much more of energy, whereas this part here is much more of force. Okay, so just, you know, if we're moving side to side, then basically as we put the weight into this foot becomes empty and free. So suddenly it just slowly gains potential energy. It gains the ability to do work because it's become free enough to come off the ground. Yeah, so full and empty, left side, right side. And we just want to be able to work and just really feel as this goes down another millimeter, this opens up another millimeter. I just don't just take it for granted. I really have to actively tighten this side and I have to actively open this side. Otherwise it just won't happen. So my spirit is really, so I've got this equilibrating spirit, this spirit that's just really listening to the system so that it can so that I can keep the system in this very delicate but lively equilibrium. And now let's just, the same thing now, but just in the one foot. So just feel, if I come sort of, if I push my big toe more into the ground, so much so that the little toe is allowed to lift up a tiny bit, then I have full and empty within the foot. So my big toe is now pushing into the ground. So all my heaviness is in the big toe side, and the little toe side has become empty. And then I can clench, with the, and that brings me into the outside edge. And the big toe would actually come off the ground if I let it. Yeah. So now the energy is coming up the instep. Yeah. And then as I come into the toe, the little finger is allowed to, so the little toe is allowed to extend and come off the ground. So that becomes empty. And then so it has the energy, and now it can just do the work. And now it's as though the big toe comes off the ground. And then, yeah. So I have full and empty within the foot, as well as one foot and the other foot. Yeah, so we just want to feel the importance of the little toe and the little finger. Because it's that enables me to venture out with my energy. So venturing like into the unknown, like the scout, and then, waving back to its army, saying, come on, it's okay, it's safe. And then I just curl up. So the little toe is now curling and the big toe can now extend. So the big toe is just sort of like bringing up the troops. But it's quite different. And we sort of we've lost the little toe and the little finger. So when I look at like the feet of my old ladies, it's almost like they've got no mobility in the little toes. In fact, the whole front of their foot is just like a wedge. It's just like this. They can't open their toes at all. So we just really want to open the toes and get them all active, but sort of alternating. So the little toe goes first, and then the other toe next to it, and then the other one, then the other one, then the other one, then the other one. And then now the thumb goes out, and that pulls in, but it's very different than when the little toe goes out. Yeah, so we could say that that the little toe and the little finger are very much of the right hemisphere, whereas the thumb and the forefinger are very much of the left hemisphere of the brain. Okay, let's just try a little bit with the other hand. So just rocking onto the inside of the foot, something we never normally do. We do it, but only when we come into this foot. So now I just want to keep some weight in this foot. Yeah. So it's now full and empty within the one foot. So I just rock onto the inside edge a little bit. Then my little toe can extend. And then I just pull it back, and I'm now pulling that outside edge into the ground, and it's pulling me around this way. And that will bring the thumb and the forefinger and the big toe out. And then I just curl those up. We just want to feel just how different the thumb forefinger feels to the other two fingers, the fourth and fifth fingers. So it's like the thumb and the forefinger, it's like they have too much, they're too strong. I have to really tone them down to keep them in proportion. Whereas the little finger and the finger next to it really need to become much stronger and longer for them to take up their role with spirit. I was reading a book about consciousness, and he was saying, when we were at our super religious, so basically before agriculture sort of kicked in, then the right side of the brain had a language center, which it doesn't anymore. It's just that center is just vestigial, because language is just now just the domain of the left hemisphere. And so what that language center in the right side did, it would talk to the other side. So instead of us having a sense that we're talking to ourselves all the time, it would be very much like a voice, like a hallucination. There'd be a voice coming from the gods, or from the ancestors that would be giving you instructions. And because it's the part of the brain that's much more connected and much more knowledgeable and much more capable, the advice that came from it was always good. It just so little toe going out, and then I clench with it, and that pulls me into the outside edge, and then the big toe clenches. Okay, so let's bring it back. So I recommend just doing a lot of work with the feet, with the toes. It's like jogging on the spots and not putting your heels down, coming onto your toes, rocking back onto the heels, all just sort of simple exercises. But you can also get like toe spacers. They're just sort of like piece of plastic, really, that you just push between the toes, and it just spreads the toes apart. And you can just sort of, have that put your sock on then, and just put that inside your shoe. And then your toes are just being edged apart all the time, because it's just really important. And John always used to say that if you want your hands to be really dexterous and capable, you really need to work your feet. So, he really just understood just how they're basically the same thing. So what he used to do, he used to have like just a tabletop. Remember that wooden tabletop that was about this deep? He'd have that on the ground. So it's like a little step, and he'd just be dancing up and down really, really quick as he could, for as long as he could. So like a good 20 minutes, just to really bring that sort of nimble activity into the feet. Because then the feet teach the hands. It's difficult for the hands to teach the feet, because they're just a bit sort of slow. And you think, like in China in the olden days, the noblemen used to control their concubines and their women by binding their feet, by making their feet incapable of movement. So it just really cripples the spirit. If your feet have been clad your whole life, if they've been in shoes, then there's not surprising you've just got a shit spirit. Basically, just slave mentality. Okay, so let's just bring it up. Yeah, this sort of sense that your feet, you're like a kitten, like a happy kitten that's just needing the blanket. So your active toes express your contentment. So it's an active contentment. Okay, so let's finish.